A very warm welcome to the panelists, very respected and distinguished panelists. As we get into the session, I'd start with a small preamble to set the ball rolling before we come to the panel discussion. I think the first thing was about the union budget, mentioning about the digital university. So it included things like world-class educational, personalized education, different languages, skills, outcomes, alignment to NSQF. So this is what set the ball rolling. And then thereafter, when we try to understand why this is getting done, we also have the connect to the gross enrollment ratio percentage need to be 50%. And then we need to increase employability. The skills is connected to that. And then the outcome-oriented education part towards which the direction is going. The other dimension is where industry is coming from, and where Industry 4.0 is changing the needs of employers, what kind of employees they are looking for, and what institutions are doing for this. So we also seen learner behavior changing across the pandemic. It has accelerated, and the expectations have changed. At the same time, we also see that institutions are trying to gear up. They have understood what is working, what is not working. They got a feel of certain things, and EdTech is also coming into play. So this is one direction with respect to the context. The second direction in a topic like this is the differentiation between digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation. So when we say digitization, we're talking about one element which is getting digitized. So if you've got a text file being made, a PDF file or an audio file, that is digitization. Digitalization is where you have an application and you're automating a process, a full process, which will give you an output. And digital transformation is where the whole thing is transformed and changed, so that you have got, for example, a digital university. It's a digital transformation. So we are talking about this journey from, we are in various stages of this, from digitization to digitalization to digital transformation. This is the background and the context to set the context well. So at the end of this, what we would like to expect are two things. First is what are the opportunities and challenges in the business school journey across this digitization to digitalization to digital transformation. And the other one is relate to the outcomes which we are expecting. We have to be realistic here for business schools to get digitally transformed, the priorities and the sketch and the roadmap for implementation. The ME has already introduced the speakers, so we will get straight away into the discussion. We have about 15 minutes overall. I think I've taken about 4 minutes or so. And I'll come to the first point to open it up. And here I refer to the recent, the session by where the director IIT Madras also spoke, Professor Kamakoti. And the case here was, he mentioned that there are about 25 lakh students who have enrolled in Swayam. And he said 3.5 lakh wrote the exam. And 2.2 lakh took the credit. They took credits and used it elsewhere in other universities. Swayam has been in place since 2016-17, and this is a good example to look at because you've got digital transformation which has taken place here. So it's a good case to look at. So far so good, but what are the challenges here? So we saw that only 15% wrote the exam. This is quite common when it comes to such courses, but it's a challenge. And then only 8% took credit transfer. So so the question goes this way. How do we get better learning and employability outcomes? How do we go beyond this 15%, 8%? How do we measure employability in such a context? So some of the speakers represent institutions, particularly the private institutions such as SRM, LPU, KIIT, ICFAI also, who are offering fully online programs. So in a sense that part of the digital transformation is already there. So the question is like this: what are the opportunities and challenges in this journey? If you look at it from a Swayam point of view or our individual experience point of view, and how do we ensure and align for outcomes-based education when we talk about the digital university? I'm emphasizing on the outcomes and the milestones in the middle, so that we come out with we have practical points that the audience can take away. Thank you very much. I think with that, I would request Professor Shailendra Singh to respond to that.
Namaskar. I'm happy to be here among August panelists. Let me state that digital university, the concept that has been presented in the Union Budget 2022, gives a roadmap that education will be democratized. And recent pandemic has actually shown that all IIMs, IITs, other universities, all of them went online. What we say that need is the mother of invention. Prior to that, although we had the platforms, we had the issues on which we can deliver online, but we were not using that in that frequency and that quantity. But as the February and March 2020 happened, we switched to online education. And here, opportunities are many. We can say that what you mentioned already, enrollment and gross enrollment ratios can be increased, and whatever we can say that our country is a highly educated, because people will get the credits and degrees, and people will get kind of outcome. But this is positive side. But what challenge was thrown, outcome based. So let me just say, outcome can be tested in digital mode of education also, and many of the courses that are offered, they also have inbuilt questions, inbuilt session, inbuilt assignments. And if the students are doing that and demonstrating that they have shown the reasonable level of skill in whatever content understanding and whatever content related skill demonstration. If that is there, then definitely it is promising. But let me just say, till our internet is going to be very, very strong. Whatever we do, we have not whatever we can say reachable outcome. Let me just give the experience. We have close to 800 students in our institute. Institute was closed, but close to 50% of the students appealed. So we have a lot of issues with erratic internet connection. We have power connectivity issue. We are having other kind of space issue. So we should be allowed to stay in the hostel. So although the institute is closed, the students are still staying in the hostel. And in institute hostel, of course, the good internet facilities available. And another thing, what we say as a challenge, peer learning. What happens normally when we are in the what is our in-person classes, that goes as a tacit knowledge. That is not very good when we are having online and virtual mode. So that I will say definitely a challenge. And as we see education, there is a lot of background noise, it seems. So as we say that in entire education, 50% is a self-learning, and the learning through classroom interaction. But the 50% of the learning comes through peer interaction and on the project, on the situation job. So when we are having this online and virtual interaction, they're ensuring those kind of learning will be somewhat challenging. If we can do that with the various issues and ways and means, like what we say flipped classrooms, what we say group experiences, etc., then to some extent those challenges can be met. Otherwise, digital university is for mass education. But if you want to have class education, then in-person education will definitely be required. And see, all the students are clamoring to come to the campuses and want the physical interaction, in-person interaction. That's the evidence of that. I will stop here and listen to other panelists and then go for the other questions. Thank you.
Very good. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Singh. I request Professor Das to respond.
Thank you, Professor Prasad. The theme is the digital university and the B school. Now, based on what you have said and what Professor Shailendra Singh said, we need to understand it very clearly that the education imparted in a university per se and education imparted in a business school per se are major shade different. Because in university, when you are doing a class and you're teaching students a certain subject matter like the SWAYAM and other online courses, MOOC based or Coursera or edX, there's the content that is delivered to a student. And the contents they understand, pass an exam, and they get to know, and they get a certificate. The B school environment is radically different from this set of learning which the students are to get. And this is primarily because the B school students are aiming for a job, a good job. That's the primary requirement. And that's the reason why the fees are high and the content delivery and learning experience is of much superior quality as compared to a lot of other educational institutions. And that's how the equation works out. And you may be aware the students always try to calculate what is the ROI for getting into a B school. So the B schools are very intensely focused on what is called the learning experience that is imparted. When we say learning experience, it is not from a professor's point of view, which could be looked at from a SWAYAM type of a digital course, delivered course, or a Coursera and things like that. Here, the learning experience is to be judged from the recruiter's perspective. What is it that the recruiters want? And therefore, entire curriculum, entire learning experience configured and delivered by a B school is fine-tuned to that extent, right? And we, as the professors, we understand that when you talk of a learning experience to a student, essentially there are three components, the curriculum-based activity, the co-curricular activities, the extracurricular activities. The curricular activities we understand, extra we understand. The co-curricular activities are essentially those learning experience that you impart to the student, which are not possible to be covered in a classroom situation. So, students have management quizzes, a conference, a seminar, a panel discussion, and a workshop participated by a student or attended by a student or organized by a student. So these form a very important element of a learning experience which is given to a student. A lot of these schools encourage students to write technical papers, management technical papers, and they're encouraged to go and attend conferences, national as well as international. And these students are rewarded. So there is some kind of competition among students to write those kinds of papers and get accepted. Now, they provide some kind of ecosystem for the students to enhance their learning experience, which is not there to that extent in a university environment. So therefore, what I'm saying is all these are done from the perspective of what is called the requirement of a recruiter. Almost 90% students are looking for a job. So the entire focus is on. So as a B school, we try to figure out and understand what is it that the recruiters want. And there's a very strong feedback mechanism when the recruitments happen, so that the feedback is plowed down into the curriculum or a co-curriculum or even extracurricular activities, such that the next year's recruitment is improved, right? This is how it is done. Now, so this is the typical way of handling a B school, learning experience imparted to a student. Now you talked of digitization, digitalization, and digital transformation. So now when you look at the digitization in this perspective of B school learning experience, which is designed and delivered, so you pick up few courses, and you do it online, right? You do it. Now, for example, at FORE school, we, based on the pandemic requirement, you do online classes. Then we had this issue of hybrid classes. The earlier panel, they were saying that, hybrid classes are not good because, you don't know who's there, who's not there. So you need to find a technological solution to this. And we actually got these, what you call the hybrid classes. If I have time, I'll show you 1-minute clip. Hybrid classes where, for example, 60 students in a classroom. So let's say 30 students are joining online and 30 students are sitting in the classroom, and professor is in the classroom. So all 60 students can be seen by the professor, and all 60 students can see all other 59 students, either in person or through the digital media. So you have to have infrastructure in the classroom like that. So therefore, the first question of a learning experience is to know who's what, who's where, who's speaking what, who looks how, the personal connect. So now technology is there to ensure those things happening. So as of now, we have only 4G connection, and the bandwidth are reasonably good, assuming 5G will come. So these things would become much more superior. So that is the one part of delivering classroom content. The students have typically books. So we delivered them e-books. Now students are not very happy with receiving e-books. They say, no, we don't the hard copy books. I mean, it was a surprise to us, a learning experience for us. So the transformation has to be seen in terms of the acceptability of the, the target group, the student, as well as the recruiters. So the last 2 years, the recruitment process, the entire process was online. The current second year students are coming to the campus for the first time at the fag end of their 2-year program. Now their recruitment has happened, right? So they never came to the classroom in that sense, and the recruitment happened. Now we are very closely trying to understand what is it that the recruiters changed in their mindset, that they found all these guys suitable for the job and the task for which they are paying tens of lakhs rupees per year. So the transformation has to be seen in that perspective. And the entire activity that we have, we need to ensure how we translate that into a model where the recruiters are, able to accept. So the way recruiters change the requirements, our entire learning experience has to undergo a change. So this is a dynamic process. We need to continuously look at it and keep progressing in that path. This is a broad take that I have. I can't give you a straight solution that you do this and then you'll end up in, digital transformation will happen. It is meaningless, unless and until the recruiters find it useful for them. Now, the other point is, in the current times, we are in an age of information overload. So all the information is available to students. So if the information and details are available, what does the teacher do in the classroom? Right? So that's the big question. Now I'll give you an example. I'd seen a homeopathic doctor tens of years back. So he'd listen to the patient, and after listening to the patient, he had one thick book of homeopathy. Thick book means it was at least 8 inches thick. A huge book. And then he'll start flipping through the pages, right? And then he'll keep noting down. Within 1 or 2 minutes, he'll write something. And after that, then he'll start writing the prescription for the patient. Now, he was a very popular, extremely popular doctor. You need to book his time a few days in advance. Now, the information is in the book, right? But can anyone write that prescription if they have the book in their hand? Probably not. So, taking this simile to our own information age situation, all that information is there. The student who has not attended a course, for example, not attended an MBA program, for example, can this person go into a management job and keep Googling and keep looking at the information resources and handle a job? Probably not. So therefore, there's a huge role that the teacher has to play in the classroom to enhance the learning experience. So the student, when the requirement is there, the student shouldn't be looking at the index page. They should know exactly where to go, what to look for, and what is the solution. So this is the way we need to look at the way the transformation is going to happen.
Thank you, Professor Das. I think you raised a lot of valid points. And the first thing that you centered on was about, the learning experience being very different in a B school and what happens in a university, the dominance of the content in terms of a university, and the need for a recruiter perspective, which shapes the learning, or what makes the learning experience important or relevant in the case of a business school. You also touched upon the importance of co-curricular activities, which increase the employability in the case of a B school. You also mentioned that this whole exercise is contextual, and therefore there are no very easy made solution, and that in the case of a B school, content by itself is not enough. There are a number of other things. I'll also touch upon what Professor Singh had highlighted. I think he highlighted the point that peer learning is extremely important, and therefore, it's not just tacit knowledge to some extent comes and is better when it is in the classroom than in the online. Peer learning is something that is a challenge, and also the fact that infrastructure, which includes bandwidth, power, etc., has been a challenge in a country like India. I now move over to Professor Maitri. I invite Professor Maitri to share his response.
Thank you, Prasad. Thank you very much. I think the topic digital university and the B school, and also you have mentioned about recent budget, digital university hub and spoke model, and also universalization of education, and also a personalized experience to the students. So these are the terms used in the budget when Honorable Finance Minister presented. And at the same time, let me tell you, all the esteemed members, the government of Maharashtra has appointed a committee 3 months back, the online university. So, and as a part of online university, we interacted some of the universities like Digital University Kerala and also Open University UK, and we are working on that. And based on that, and meantime the budget came and we also discussed. So let me share the experience of digital university. And I think what Prasad you talked about, IIT Madras director and SWAYAM, that is a course. It is a part of it, small element of it is talking about the course, as Professor Jitendra Das rightly said. We are talking about the university. Digital university means it is designed by the digital design and digital offerings. And for digital design and digital offering, there is a lot of the communication technology team working background, and only tips of the iceberg will be at the top, and 90% of the activities happening, they are intangible, because we have moved from industry era to intelligence era. Industry era, everything is visible, tangible, physical, assembly line, people working, all you can see. But intelligence era, you can't see anything, only you can get the best of the best result. So the best example, the DBS Bank of Singapore, everybody course. That is one of the best bank, best service, but you can't see where it is there. So digital universities are going to be like that. So digital design, whatever the using industry 4.0 tools and techniques and all the design is done, AI and IoT, IoA, IoB, all those things. So then once it is designed and what kind of offering we do, that makes the difference from one university to other. Now, the question comes, when we think of digital university and you compare with the current one, and current always wins over the future, because future we have understood less and current what we are doing is compatible. and discomfort is always uncomfortable and there is a resistance. So that is why we always say that these are the reasons why, that is going to be difficult. But if there is a non-returning wall like COVID, you can't, offline or mainline became offline and offline became online, and now online is mainline. So in such kind of situation, when compulsion comes, then we last 2 years now we are alternative mode. We are working and we are developing expertise. But many times when we start beginning, probably what we get is it is a traditional to the new transition time. We follow what are the old way of pedagogy, but now we have modified and probably with experience, expertise changes happen. But in digital engagement, and as Professor Shailendra Singh rightly said, the P part, so there are certain issues when you look into the digital or online, but as and when problems come, challenges comes, and they will be tackled in due course of time. As you know that Rome is not built overnight, and it will take its own time. Probably in pharmacy, they say 8 to 10 years for the vaccine, but this time it came for 8 to 6 months. So like that, probably the speed has taken over the change and digitalization is happening. And all these problems, the bandwidth, the digital India, digitalization, many things are going to, if it is a necessary, automatically things will change and government will also put the pressure in different level and they will get it done. But the issue is digital universities and the B schools. As if you with the national education policy, all universities are going to be autonomous and all universities are given full autonomy, and only such and constituent colleges will be there with the university. But affiliated colleges are going to disappear. So in this context, every university is going to have its own autonomy, and in the autonomous world, they may run all kinds of maybe offline, online, and fully digital. And again, there is a difference between open and distance learning and online. So there are thin line difference, but all the modes, probably one university can run all the thing, and probably, whether university can be on cloud. Prasad ji, it was the question. Yes, university can be fully on cloud. One can go for fully digitalized university, no physical. But one can think of fully physical, but probably that was the reality. Now that is going to change. If it is going to be hybrid or it is going to be a digital. And only physical, probably in future, it is going to disappear. And that is what the trend today coming, because the digital technology, the kind of advancements are happening, they are forcing all of us to, whether you like or dislike, you have to get into digital, online, or hybrid mode. One has to get into that. And learner-centric, as Professor Jitendra Das rightly said, the pedagogy, the way we teach, that has to be changed. So it has to be a phenomena-based learning. It has to be project-based learning, and probably business games. And also some of the simulations, those things are probably going big number classrooms. These are going to make learning more interesting and probably more, personalized experience and better experience to the students than the physical, if we utilize all these tools and techniques and very systematically and optimal way. And probably evaluation today, evaluation is a big component, assessment, university, and all those things. Now, in future, in this digital world, the teaching and evaluation may happen simultaneously. In simulation games or in business games or even physical games, if you do, probably after 10, 12 rounds, you can assess a risk-taking ability of the candidate. You can assess the courage. You can assess the strategy, how one can change the strategy. You can also assess the tenacity. So all those are, you can also assess the curiosity of the candidate, which cannot be assessed with current evaluation. maybe 90, 91 marks, but he or she may not be having the courage. So that is why evaluation and pedagogy, these two parts may also in this digital world, both can happen immediately, simultaneously. And you need not have a separate evaluation in this digital world or in this whatever online world. So these are some of the changes are going to happen, and future belongs to the hybrid world. And digital may be little bit ahead, but digital also means the definition of digital may be, some different places like online and distance learning. The changes will be there, but future, it is all we are moving in the direction of digital world. And all those problems, what we think they are going to be resolved in due course of time, as and when problem comes, technology develops, and operating system, operating standards will go up, and the day will come, we will be optimally utilizing a digital university. And I'm sure B schools are part of that university. They will get a digital design as per the B school. We have to all those three components, what Professor Jitendra Das said, they should be incorporated into the digital design, and digital offering are coming out of that, and students can get a benefit. So this is what I think my input, and thank you very much, Prasad.
Thank you, Professor Maitri. I think you've focused on I think you brought the context that affiliated colleges may not be there in the context going ahead, and therefore with the autonomy, there'll be a lot of variety that people will come up with. And you also mentioned that what you see is finally going to be hybrid or digital, may not be only campus, though that may be the one which is successful now. You highlighted the need for digital design when you talk about a digital university or a business school in the context of a digital university. Thank you very much. We now move over to Professor Desikan to respond to this question.
And thank you, Professor Prasad. I hope I'm audible because there was some hiccups on my video.
Yes, sir, you are.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, fellow panelists, esteemed. I think the topic is digital university and the B school perspective. I think Professor Das has rightly said, when it comes to the curriculum, I always say that in engineering and science, the knowledge of the fundamentals happen inside and, they go out to the humanity. While in B school, it's the other way around. What Pepsi did and Coca-Cola did is what we, teach the kids as the cases. So the knowledge, the foundation knowledge, while in the science and engineering may be fairly stable, and you may perhaps do the plumbing, if I may use the word, of the curriculum for engineering as the time passes. Whereas in B school curriculum, it's a very important factor that you need to be doing it at a very, very quick way. Maybe once in 2 years, once in 3 years, or some subjects even once a year. Because what I studied 30 years ago on marketing fundamentals may not be those, numerics and other things will stand. So first point is curriculum, if I may use the word volatility. We're taking with a pinch of salt. So the fundamental curriculum itself has to go through a lot of things. In that sense, yes, Professor Das is right. Ours, the B school is not exactly like an engineering school, curriculum part of it. And today's topic is digital world, university and the B school. And I was told to take up the hybrid education, hybrid part of it. I think all of you would have listened to the AICT's webinar also. It was a very nice thing to say the hybrid is being used as a phygital world, physical and digital. Now we hear the new phrase called the phygital world, if that is what hybrid is, because in the phygital world, I would say, in fact, at SRM also, we have been getting ourselves ready for that. Particularly in B schools, teaching the classrooms, cases, etc., you may have to have a lot of individual participation. I remember my own days, we are asked to do the role play, come to the stage and act like a marketing vice president or a CEO. And so the students will be asked to do a lot of role play, which is what one of the panelists also said about experiential thing. So B school education, the experience is the key through the cases, role play, etc. So that's the curriculum and the content part of it. Now, in this digitized world, the future forward, we are talking of the delivery. Many of us have touched upon it, on the hardware and software requirements. Individual universities and institutions may be, spending a lot of money as a primary investment. Maybe we can even ask the government to subsidize some of this. It was heartening to listen to the secretary of, talking about 6 lakhs villages of BharatNet being, getting ready in the future. So the government is also making a lot of things. So we should, as a university, perhaps look for some kind of subsidies to invest in this online thing. At our own SRM, we've been trying to update the classroom, electronics or hardware to quite a degree, such that the students, whether they are online or inside the classroom, may not feel the difference so much. There could even be moving cameras where the way teacher moves around and uses on the whiteboard, and if there are 10 students sitting in the class feeling the presence of the teacher, the students participating online also would have the same way, because the camera literally talks, and we have, high resolution cameras and audios that are there. So the digital world, the difference of experience of the individual students may not be that much if one is able to invest that. And we are also happy to say we are getting ready for that. This is the second part. First is the curriculum. Second is the hardware and software part of this digital world. And the third most important thing, I think some of the panelists touched it earlier, is it is not just a faculty development program. Earlier, an FTP would be, if, to teach the faculty or equip the faculty about the newer content, newer topic, newer subject, neural networks or new marketing, etc., model, etc. Or the pedagogical part of it, that could be perhaps part of the faculty development. But here, it's going to be a lot beyond. Because, as a teacher, if I have to kind of to look into the laptop camera and keep talking about it with, looking at the students as on the screen, it's going to be a very subtle psychological, impact on me as a teacher. So the faculty development would have to address this kind of, transforming the teacher for the digital world, so to say. The transformation of the teacher has to happen on all these 3 dimensions. The content of the subject that is new, that is coming up, the pedagogical aspects of, connecting with the students. Third, the teacher oneself. So that is a very, very important. This is a third aspect I would talk about it. Train the FTP being slightly more than the normal understanding for all of us. Transforming the teacher, I would call, for the digital world. Fourth, of course, is the pedagogy. All of us have talked about it. And in these schools, unlike some kind of video only or animation only, an engineering or a science can be taught, we can think of going forward in the digital world, a lot of games coming into. I have my teenager kids literally sitting there and playing with somebody in Mexico. You can even have a common area and the players get into it. So in the same way, if I can think of organization and in the boardroom in the game, the vice president marketing will be a student sitting in the classroom, while the vice president may be participating somewhere in online, and they can come here. And I'm not talking about science fiction, futuristic. It's there in the game. The gaming industry has proved all, where participants physically, inside the game, can reach a place. So if my teacher at IIM Bangalore told me to come to the podium and do a role play, I think we can ask the future students also to do a role play through a game. So the pedagogical aspect of content development, not just videos and PPTs only, has to get into this mode of it. So it's a kind of a real technology challenge of content preparation going forward. We are not yet there. We have reached maybe in finance and other places, simulation games and what if analysis kind of stuff. But literally to have, as Professor Das said, the experience has to be there. And I'm not having the physical classroom, then I don't miss anything in the digital world. These are very essential aspects of the pedagogical elements. Otherwise, yes, we are all good about it. We've been teaching online courses, case discussions, and even interactions students coming into. But the experience part of it, gaming is going to be a major hardware and technology partner in the pedagogical part of it. The final part, before I close it, will be that, we all know that Dr. Kasturi Rangan's NEP 2020, the government has adopted it. Individual state governments are getting ready for that. Universities are getting for that outcome-based education. So we have done a lot of work on each of these course design, the outcome measurement, each aspect of outcome, how do you measure amongst the students? And it's a complex, all of us know about that. Now it's going to be a big challenge for us again, because if it is going to be not just the physical classroom where I can say class participation or, the person's personality as a student, now in the digital world, how am I going to measure each one of it? It's not just the assessment and the performance thereof of individual examinations for the courses. So OBE, I think all of us as educators and teachers, we may have to relook at it and then really see in the digital world how this OBE even design is going to be. And another challenge is that what you are going to really measure as an outcome, the student understanding, etc., amongst these subjects, and how you measure that. If the person doesn't appear at all, as some of us have talked about the 100% digital world, university on a cloud, etc., what is our OBE is going to be? So that is the critical part. With these 4 or 5 elements, I thought is very important. I stop here.
Thanks a lot, Professor Desikan. I think you've brought in additional insights. First, about the curriculum volatility between engineering and the business school. The next is about the requirements when you get into phygital or hybrid, particularly with respect to hardware and software, which needs to be identified. You also highlighted the need for behavioral and psychological change in the faculty and development programs, which focus on that. You did mention about pedagogy and the fact that with technology, you may also be able to do a role play while doing a game. And most importantly, you stressed on how to relook at outcome-based education in terms of measures and the methods that you may use to take it up when you do online or hybrid as versus the physical. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I now request Dr. Mahapatra, Professor Mahapatra, to share his responses with us.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad. Esteemed fellow panelists and the audience who have remotely joined this conclave. At the outset, let me bring you the warm greetings from all my colleagues at KIIT University. I thank Business World Education for giving this platform to share my experience. Good evening to all. So the theme of this session is Digital University and the B-School, and a lot of perspectives have already come. I would not like to repeat much. However, through this digital medium of interaction today, we have already begun participating in and witnessing the digital transformation in education. And we have been witnessing it largely for the last 2 years. But I believe the journey is long and we are going to see many changes ahead. The contents of the session is placed on internet. The number of attendees and beneficiaries of this session shall keep rising over a period of time. You'll see. This is just a peep into the reach that digital education can have. During discussion, one point came up, this versus that. Digital education or this kind of hybrid education, digital education versus classroom education. For a moment, I would like us to think that this divide is artificial. They are not one against other, but they are very, very complementary in nature. Recently, we had our 18th convocation on 16th of February. And for 2 reasons, this is important to us. One is the theme of the conference we kept, world is one. The unifying factor of digital world. The second is, in this meeting, for the first time, it was not anchored by a human being, but by a robot called ISA. And it was flawless anchoring. I'm giving a feel that 1,000 people could attend, 1,000 of the faculty could attend from a large auditorium, and equal number or more from different parts of the country and some parts of the world. So this is a kind of a experience of future world that we are going to see more and more. And it will not be confined to one conference or one conclave, but it will extend to classroom, whether we like or not. Professor Das could not probably show that classroom setting. I am also not going to show that, but it is basically.
I'll show that. I've figured out the solution. I'll
Okay,
be able to show it.
After this, you can show that, sir.
Yeah.
Basically, it's as he already very beautifully described. There will be panels throughout the classroom, because I have two of such places in my campus. And there is a roving camera which tracks the movement of the faculty. Everything he writes in the smart board, everything gets tracked. Smart classrooms, computers, internet, and smart technology have existed, all of you know, for quite some time. But the point I'm trying to make is the last 2 years, these have become life-saving technologies for all educational institutions. Don't you agree? Life-saving technologies. Global, if I look at some data, global venture capital
This way.
for education technology have been growing at a snail's pace for almost 10 years, but last 2 years, it has basically tripled. And if I look at 10 years data together, China has spent about $29.5 billion in education technology. USA has invested $21.3 billion, and India is a distant third with $7.9 billion. I'm taking the 10 years calculation. So imagine, last 3 years out of this, we have spent bulk of the amount, and it is going to get further expedited and further increased. Because if you compare it with how much digitization is happening under Industry 4.0, if you look at it, it is already crossed $7 trillion. Okay, so education is the platform provider to industry. We have to train people for the industry. So if they are requiring something, we cannot be lagging behind. We have to be very careful about it. Now, where is the challenge? There I will focus. I'll use a simile. The school bag has got lighter, but the content is getting heavier. Just see, books are getting replaced by pen drive, cloud storage, AR, VR, edu-aids. And the notebooks are replaced by personal computers and tablets these days. The learner cycle time, if you see, for new learning has shortened day by day with multimedia exposure. But as Professor Das very rightly said, there is a cacophony of data and information cluttering the mind as well. How to filter? There is a challenge. Distillation of data into useful information is a challenge. Going further downstream, putting useful information into good use is another challenge. Going further downstream, putting good use of information for greater good of society and environment against satisfaction of narrow self-interest have posed new challenges for us as educationists. Our issue is not so much about technology, but adapting to technology the right way. Ethical mindset, social sensitivity, environmental consciousness, inclusive thinking, sustainable decision making, keeping all stakeholders' interest in mind, etc. These have become larger questions for a digital education system, which has made the production and distribution system very, very efficient now. The lure of the digital society, if you see, is towards ease of living and rampant consumerism. It's a reflection of affluence without wisdom, placing people against planet or environment. This is a challenge, major challenge we are facing. We cannot run away from digital technology. We cannot say that this is for the classroom and that is for the outside world. This is for this purpose and that is not for our purpose. In fact, I very humbly beg to differ that because we are a business school, our job is to only train people for jobs. No. Since time immemorial, whether a person studies even history, civics, geography, economics, they are also training for a job. Occupation is the first concern. The second concern is to lead a life. Unfortunately, the B-school education is only focused on the jobs. It is not focused on leading a life. The point I am trying to make here is, under the digital influence, probably that mindset will become more intense. Jobs only for the jobs, high value jobs, and the life aspect, living a good human life, living a proper human life with a proper ethical mindset, probably that may take a backseat. I am little focused on the content of this theme. The theme was digital university. Aspects of digital university have been discussed. Okay, but what is the challenge for a business school? I thought I will bring in this perspective for you. This gap between rich and poor, what you are seeing today, it is around a digital divide. It is no longer around ownership of land, ownership of capital. Please understand. In our own backward, in our own families, those children who are doing good in this digital education, they are leaving their rest of the family behind. They are moving to USA, they are migrating to different cities, and they are leaving their families behind. This is something we need to take note of also. And I believe that since KIIT University believes in the human face, we are bringing this into our curriculum in a way that while we teach all the modes and methods of earning good money for or good future for themselves, whether as a job holder or as an entrepreneur, they should never forget that there is a society, there is a community also around which needs to be looked after. And of course, it is many of you, those who have visited KIIT University, you know, one university sustains another university called KIIT University with another 30,000 students who are studying absolutely free of cost. Their fooding, their education, right up to postgraduate level, everything is taken care of by one self-financing university having 30,000 students. My point is, I emphasize this, that whether you are a standalone institute or whether you're a university, time has come to recognize this requirement. If we are not sensitive to this, we are going to end up in little trouble. This digital divide is soon going to become a rich-poor divide in the world. I will rest my point here, reserve for the question and answer sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mahapatra. I think you brought a very important dimension, and you started, you concluded with the digital divide, which is the most important, and then under that was the balance between occupation and leading life, where typically business schools are focused on occupation. You connected that to the needs of the society and the community. And then you felt that the rest of it in terms of technology investment is getting done. And so somewhere along the way, the technology will come in to make all this happen. But I think the most important point was that overall for society, the digital divide is a challenge and we need to do things for that. I now request Professor, I think we have one more panel member, Dr. Sanjay Modi. I request Dr. Sanjay Modi to also respond before we go to the 1 minute video.
Thank you very much, Professor Prasad, and greetings to all the esteemed panel members. I think majority of the things have been said. Let me begin by making one small point, which has practically happened on the ground in LPU. Very surprisingly, I was at least personally not expecting it. But then this time, the number of companies which have come for hiring of business management students has phenomenally increased. Number one, average salaries and salaries of a certain limit, they have phenomenally increased, in spite of the fact that this batch of students who is going to pass out in 2022, they have not been onto the campus. It is now that some of them are dropping in. And here again, it's not the complete batch which is coming. So this comes as a surprise, which means that the digital education, in spite of our own fears that it might not deliver the learning outcomes, it has actually succeeded. Reason being that, I don't know, I can share my experiences. We made the faculty very conscious of the fact. We monitored how education, the delivery is being made online. And we found that, because it was a sudden shift, so some faculty thought, since everybody was not visible on the screen, so they were a little less interactive to begin with, which we showed them different models, and ultimately the interactivity improved. And in addition to that, we made sure that, the personal interaction or moving into the society, they don't miss that element. So we gave them assignments which they could do in their respective places. some broad analysis which they could undertake. And I think, these students, one good thing which might have happened during this time is that they saved a lot of time of commuting between places, and they had more time to focus on what they were expected to do. So probably they were able to strengthen their analysis and their own self-study, which led to, because in our anxiety to share more, at times the business institution and all academic institutions in general, they tend to overload the student with information. So this is a very interesting dimension which I wanted to share with you. And I think one element which has contributed to this improvement is that, because of the facility of digital interactions, online interactions, the industry experts have become more open to interaction with students. So the number of interactions, the quality of interactions with the industry professionals have increased very, very significantly indeed. And surprisingly, they are also, because perhaps they had a little more time, they were very passionate to share things in a very practical manner as would benefit the students. And likewise, interactions with international faculty and international industry experts, student participation in online conferences, and large number of online events, and even, to compensate for this, physical kind of co-curricular or cultural activities, I think LPU took this initiative that even the student clubs were in operation. They were doing something which they were expecting the students to do in their respective places. Cultural co-curricular activity, all of them were converted into digital formats, where every competition was happening online. We were very concerned that this might get diluted, but surprisingly it has not. But one small concern which I would like to share in the context of a digital university is that, if you look at times, I'm not talking about the content of any specific discipline, but in general, if you look at some of the content, whether it is NEPTIL or many other online content, they are not really tuned for digital education, online education, the way they should be. Perhaps if you look at the model of MOOCs from, say, Coursera, where the expert, the faculty goes into the field. If he is to speak about retailing, he goes to a retail store. He goes to a mall, shoots some part of his delivery there. He goes to the industry, operations person goes to the industry. So, that thing goes missing in the India's digital content that we create. And I think in case of business education in particular, I'm now focusing on, but even generally, even otherwise, I think that would be a very important element to focus on, so that the flavor of the ground realities is given to the student. It is not lost, because the student, as we say, this is being done in order to extend the reach to rural areas or the underprivileged. Their exposure would be even less with respect to these things. So the kind of content that we create has to have a lot of video content. I'm assuming that in times to come with 5G and all, we would have better connectivity, and those challenges of connectivity would not be there. But the content definitely needs very urgent focus. There are many institutions which are providing digital content, but this needs to be taken care of. But rest of the things, I think the generation coming generation is very well tuned to digitization, and I think it is the faculty which needs to be more, as some of the experts have already said. I think addressing the screen is a big challenge. At times, the faculty himself or herself tends to lose a little focus and believes the students are not really there. So I think one needs to understand what are the challenges of the student. So from time to time, you have to behave as if you are addressing a physical class. And I have tried my hand at teaching digitally, and I think the same amount of interaction happens. But the only thing which needs to be done is to make sure that the student is motivated enough. You have to deliver your education in a manner that it is as interesting as the physical class. You have to keep them engaged. So at times, if you do a monologue that perhaps might put the student off and he moves away from the screen, because what is there in the books is not interested in getting that. There's enough of information overload, as already said. So I think in case interactivity can be ensured, and then it is supplemented with some kind of problem-solving sessions which should happen, and a great amount of, yes, especially in case of business, I think a great amount of learning traditionally in a physical classroom comes from peer learning. So that interaction in the class, it cannot be a teacher asking a question and one student responding to it. You have to enable the same amount of interactivity amongst peers also, to make sure that the diversity of opinion, diversity of perspectives, diversity of experience, if people have experience of different regions, international students versus national students, people having work experience in one kind of industry, they narrate, they exchange their own experiences. I think if that can be ensured, which I'm sure in times to come, if we become a little more conscious and the student is more tuned to it, it should be possible. Digital can add lot of value, and the hybrid mode, I think that's the way to go, whether we like it or not. I think I'll stop here because majority of the things have been covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Modi. I think you brought in a completely new perspective, lots of freshness. I think you started with the fact that the companies have picked up more students, and more companies, students, more pay. So demand is there, and that the fear that they did not do campus learning, despite that, they were able to do that. And I think one of the advantages that you highlighted is that there was some sort of rebalancing in terms of activities by students into the marketplace, and also with respect to the kind of activities that they did, co-curricular, extracurricular, as another esteemed panel member touched upon earlier. So there was a kind of a rebalancing which took place in the way the whole program was delivered. I think you also touched upon the fact that it's important that students do things which have ground reality, and perhaps which you did in the batch, in the times of COVID. You touched upon the faculty challenges, also keeping students motivated, as well as increasing level of interactivity. Thank you very much. I think that covered a very different terrain. We'll now have Dr. Das sharing the video for a minute.
Thank you very much. This is the 1 minute video of one of our classroom, completed about 3 months back. When we're trying to do this, one of the challenges that we felt we should address up properly is that when you have a hybrid classroom, all the students sitting in the class as well as joining online should be able to see each other. And the professor who is taking the class should be able to not only see, but also interact with all these 60 students, partly in the physical classroom and partly online. So we figured out our own way to handle this. So in this classroom, the 2 cameras, one just above the whiteboard, which is a smart TV, it functions as a whiteboard for PPT or whatever, and one camera at the back of the classroom, and the 2 screens, one for the student who is sitting in the classroom for them to see, and one screen for the professor to see those students who are joining online. So in all, there are 3 screens. One is a smart TV and 2 screens on the top. So I'll just, hopefully it'll play now and you'll be able to see it. The 1 minute video. So here it goes. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This screen top is for the professor to see the online students, and the camera on the left hand side, which is a dynamic camera. It zooms, it turns, it does all that. Yeah, there's a smart TV and a camera on top of it and the screen on top for sitting students to see the online students.
Thank you, Professor Das.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
I think I'll take a minute from each of you for the concluding remarks, for anything else that you may have missed out or what you want to add on to what others have said.
As we have already discussed, business school. So outcome-based learning, when we are talking, we always say business school will be selling its product. So all our students are on sale that way. And their marketability will be there if we are having experiential learning. And as it has been said earlier by Dr. Mahapatra, that not this way or that way, it is not against, digital education is not against anybody. I am also saying that it is not against any pedagogy or any methodology or any method. But still, when we say class learning versus mass learning, peer learning and other learning will always be requiring more physical, experiential interaction to have greater impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Dr. Das.
Thank you. As we move from a physical classroom to a hybrid classroom to a digitalized learning environment, one of the most important element is the faculty preparedness, the competency of the faculty. How do you do a breakout rooms online and make forms, groups, and peep into each of the groups working as you do in a physical class? So how do you do that online? So the faculty also needs to be properly trained to operate in a technology environment such that the learning experience is not compromised. So we should not forget the faculty part of the learning experience or the preparedness of the faculty to handle all this learning experience that we are trying to deliver. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Maitri, please.
Yeah, so I think now all of you know that speed of change has taken over the size of the organization. So in this kind of environment, future belongs to digital universities and digital B schools. And the winners and the losers, if you want to differentiate those who get into digital design and digital offering, they are going to be a differentiating factors from one from the others. Thank you.
Dr. Desikan.
Yeah, see, my only point is, though we have been, as panelists, stressing the job part of it, people getting jobs, I would say in our university, we focus on three things: the entrepreneurship, being entrepreneur, developing an entrepreneurial spirit in one, and of course, the placement and the jobs that the students are made ready for it, and also about their higher studies and the research if one want to. So when I look at these three dimensions, whatever factors I have mentioned earlier, particularly in content development, etc., we have to look around this, not just preparing them for the jobs only kind of a point I want to make it. And instead of being a job seeker, we should have the mindset to be the job creator. And then I'm happy to say even one of our BBA third-year student himself has become an entrepreneur with a crore plus turnover. That's a very proud moment for all of us. So I think our as teachers and educators and designers of schools, we should be not just looking for a job-seeking mentality to a job creation mentality amongst students. That's how we should gear up on that. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Request concluding remarks from Professor Mahapatra.
See, there are two aspects in education. One is going modular, that is the skill development part, in which our faculty should focus on the competition that we are going to have from edutech companies. The second part is creation of fundamental knowledge, where we should focus on research. So as long as the university and the schools focus on these two things in a very distinct manner and know where actually to lay importance when, we will have no issues absolutely. And integration of technology is a must. There is no escape from it. The sooner we do it, the better it is.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Modi, please.
Well, there are one or two things which I would like to add. One is that, we do speak of digital institutions or universities, but a couple of things will remain deficient there, which are required particularly for the students of a business school. One, though they're relevant for everyone. Today, if you look at the industry and ask them, what is it that you expect from the student? Normally, they look at two things. They said, because skills in any way, one is able to polish on the job. They say, basically what we want is people who are confident, good communicators, and can interact, good interpersonal skills. Now, couple of these things go missing when you get into the digital world, digitization. So I think that some solution has to be found where, because the interaction that you have on the campus with your peers, with your teachers, that there is no substitute to that. And digital world, that goes missing completely. And I don't know, because as a lot of processes in times to come, especially repetitive ones, are going to get automated, the value of a human factor would be, his USP would lie in the quality of interaction that he's able to have. So if we can't build on that, or we have to, in the digital world, we have to look at options which can compensate that, competence of interacting, what we call as emotional intelligence, that empathy, but those kind of things go missing in the digital world. Because you are not interacting with your colleagues, you don't know how to interact with them, whom to befriend, whom not to befriend. This is one dimension. Second, I think there are many other connected issues. For example, student connect with the teacher. I don't think in any case it can be as warm, as close as in the physical mode. People come back. If alumni have a connect, they don't have a connect basically with the buildings. They have some connect with the buildings, the classroom I sit in, but the better connect is with the teacher. And that's because the teacher has patted the student on the back at one time, counseled him at another time, solved his problem in the third time, helped him in a difficult situation in the fourth time. Now, that's when the connect gets developed. And alumni have a lot to contribute. I don't know whether the same kind of sentiment among the alumni and the passing out students can be generated through digital learning, because neither can that connect with the teacher, nor with the peers, nor with the succeeding batches that can get connected. If you look at best of the business schools or universities, you will find alumni contributing very, very significantly, not only in terms of the financial contribution, but in terms, I know of my son studied in ISB. He trained and mentored about 8 students before the placement season. And one student was mentored by at least 5 to 6 people to make sure that they're absolutely ready for the placement season. Now, I don't know how you develop this sentiment. So the intensity of bonding with the institution to me is very important, which is so important for the growth of the institution itself. So these were the two things: the attitude, the interpersonal relationship, that and how you interact, the quality of interaction that you do, and this element of intensity of relationship with the institution. I think we'll have to struggle to find solutions to this in case we are moving to the digital world, because these are very distinctly present only in the physical space. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Modi, for your concluding remarks. I think it has been an excellent session, and we have, if you review back on the outcomes that we have expected, we are able to relate to the outcomes. And I think, the broad story is that while there are difficulties, challenges, there are opportunities, and that there is a journey, and we don't have all the answers to all the questions right now. And all these are likely to get emerged. But certainly there are some outcomes which will get defined. And I also think that we got a fairly good idea of the opportunities and challenges. So I think, it's been an excellent session, and the participants as well as the organizers, thanks to the organizers for getting us all together. And I hope the participants and those who see these videos later benefit. Thank you very much, sirs.
Thank you. Thank you, Prasadji.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great summing up. I think you did a brilliant job in summing up every speaker. Thank you.